Hey, Battlefield community. The other day I was thinking, you know what? I did a favorites video. Why don't I do guns I don't quite like that much? And that doesn't mean the gun's necessarily bad. I just don't like it, or I don't really prefer using it. It's not that it can't be used and used well by certain people. It's just not for me. And I'd go so far to say is only a couple of them are actually bad. Most of them are decent. It's just not what I prefer. First up is a gun I don't want to put on this list. It's the AUG A3. I absolutely love the AUG in real life. I love this weapon. I just don't like it in Battlefield 4. It's because it's just plain Jane. It has no redeeming qualities of any kind. And it's just not that great of a weapon. It has a low fire rate. The recoil's not all that hot. And the reload's just okay. There's no real reason not to use the AR-160. It's pretty much the exact same gun, except for it has less recoil in most directions, and it's better in pretty much every way. Why not? Next up is the SAR-21. I mostly don't prefer this weapon because the fire rate's just too damn low, and the recoil is pretty decent, but it's not so much that I want to take this. I know it's meant for range, but typically I don't ever get kills with this thing. It's just hard for me to use. It doesn't fit my play type, and I greatly prefer, again, the AR-160 or the L85A2 if I want to do some distance game. They are just a far superior weapon as far as I'm concerned. I know people will disagree with me, but that's just what I think. I've never had a good game with this gun, and I just prefer not to touch it. But feel free to tell me what I'm doing wrong or how I should be using this weapon, and I'll give it a go. Next up, I'm going to roll these both into the same category since they're almost virtually the same. The M4 and the M16A4. I think I'd actually like this weapon if it didn't jam non-freaking stop. I know it's just how I'm hitting the trigger just a little too fast or how I'm doing it, but I don't know if anybody else has this problem. About every third burst on probably every other engagement, the gun constantly jams. I'm trying to fire it fast here, but the damn thing just keeps jamming, and it's the only reason I don't like this gun. If it wasn't for that, I would probably use this because I do like burst weapons in most first-person shooters, but in this game, the burst, it seems to be broken to me. Please tell me what I'm doing wrong here. Next up would be a PDW that I never used until recently, just because I used it one time and hated the hell out of it and didn't give it a chance. I actually don't mind the gun so much now. It's just not on my top favorite list, and it's probably in my bottom of my PDW favorites list, just because it has a fairly low fire rate. Yeah, that's going to be a routine here because I like fast guns. And at the same time, it doesn't do good damage over distance. And the recoil is not that spectacular. It does have a fairly large capacity, though. But in the other guns that have that capacity, like the P90 or JS2, are definitely more my kind of gun. This one, it's a little subpar as far as I'm concerned. However, my opinion has leaned a little bit more favorable since I have played this a little bit more lately. And another PDW I don't really prefer to use, PP2000. It has a very low fire rate, even lower than the last gun, and its damage over range is kind of poor. And I mean, it does have a little larger magazine and not quite as bad recoil as the other gun. It's just not for me. It's definitely not top tier, and I only rarely have used it recently. It's just not my cup of tea. And but it's not necessarily a bad weapon. It's definitely usable still, just not that great. Now, as far as support weapons go, I don't really mind the RPK-12. It's definitely the better RPK in the game, and we're gonna get to that here in a minute. It's just it has that low fire rate and fairly standard damage model of 25 and 18, and that's not bad. But you're definitely gonna get outgunned by the AWS, MG4. Guns that also do the same damage but shoot much faster. It is decently accurate, more accurate than the other ones, but it's definitely not the best gun you can use as support. Not so bad, not too terrible. I'm kind of a mixed bag on this one. I don't mind using it that much. It's just not my favorite. And now we're on to the RPK-74M. I had fairly high hopes for this. I actually like this gun quite a bit, but not so much in Battlefield 4. It's got pretty much exactly the same stats as the RPK-12, except for it has less capacity, worse reload, and the recoil's not so hot either. It's not terrible, but it just has no home. why not use the RPK-12? It's pretty much better in every way. I know people like it just because it's the 74M version, and name-wise, I don't know. It's definitely not that great of a gun. It's usable, but not that great. Now, when it comes to pistols, people talk shit a lot about the FN57. I was actually pretty excited when I unlocked it, and everybody says it's like the worst pistol in the game for the most part. They're wrong, though. The QSZ92 is worse in pretty much every single way, which is fairly impressive. There's no redeeming qualities on this pistol. Now, this seems almost impossible because how could it be worse than what people consider the worst one in the game? Well, it's not too hard. If you look at the stats, the only thing the FN57 is actually worse than is recoil up. And that is not the biggest deal in the world on a pistol. Everything else is actually just worse. Decently worse. And I don't know why this gun's even in the game. It's hard to do well with, especially when people have Desert Eagles now or the SW40 and just kind of shit all over you. And last and certainly least, for me at least, the UTS-15. Oh my god, do I hate this weapon. This is the only one I actually consider bad. I've never ever had a good game with this gun. I cannot make it work. Please, please tell me what I need to do to make this gun a decent. You would think a pump action gun that has this giant capacity would be great, but nope, slow as hell and does no damage at any kind of distance. Now, I'm sure quite a few people won't agree with me on certain guns, and you know what? Tell me what I'm doing wrong or why I am wrong down in the comments down below. I personally have a hard time with all those guns, or I just can't do as well. Not necessarily they're bad, I just don't do as well with those guns. Anyway, if you've missed my favorite guns, it'll be linked right here and down below if you're on mobile.